One of my first jobs here in Sheffield, it was in a coffee shop, and they were a little bit mean and pushing, and also, for example, the rotas for the next week, working hours, they were just giving it to one day before the start of the week, so it was basically you not having time or for yourself or for or also in London, for example, I had a job where it was a contract, a 40 hours contract, but the bosses were very, very pushy as well in terms of extra hours, but they never intended to pay to us. So that was obviously was very disappointing, and we always try to refuse to do the extra hours if we weren't paid.
Working conditions, when I was a support worker in social care, the working conditions were terrible. We'd have long hours with no breaks. We'd get our shifts given to us sort of a couple of days before with the rotas, so no one could ever plan anything. You had to work. You were promised that you wouldn't have to work every weekend, and people would, and the sick pay and the holiday pay and the general sort of basic pay was terrible.
So most of the jobs that I've done in the past have been really insecure. So I've done bar work, I've worked in temp agencies, I've worked in shops, and consistently it's been the case that it's been kind of insecure employment. You don't have guaranteed hours, it's really, really low paid, there's no recourse to any kind of justice whatsoever. And I was kind of aware of unions and was always quite frustrated by the fact that they only ever seem to operate in sectors that are already quite secure, which obviously is because they have unions operating in them. But most kind of mainstream unions didn't ever really seem to try to kind of reach out to people who were working in the kind of newer sectors, and I'm now working as a lecturer, but as a part-time kind of by the hour lecturer, and even in kind of the sort of teaching unions and things, that the people who aren't on full-time contracts are fairly kind of underrepresented, and not really, there's not a huge amount that can be done for them according to mainstream unions.
So when I was looking for unions, I looked at all the main ones. So there are a few general unions, obviously. Most of them tend to be quite specific, but when I looked at the IWW, it's the only one that quite rigidly anyone can join. It doesn't specialise in any one field. And then I started, this was around the time a lot of stuff was going on in the news about the Labour Party and this whole scandal that they've had about Falkirk, and I just started looking at the salaries of that people were getting and thinking, well, this is whatever, it's a tough job, so maybe they deserve a bit of money, but I don't like the idea of someone earning 5 times as much as me for not doing that much.
I've been a member of Unite as well as the IWW for years, and I've tried to contact them to organise things, and they've never really got back to me. And I know that Unite is one of the big unions for the NHS nationally, and over the last couple of years they haven't really done a lot, to be honest, to fight against these effective pay cuts in the NHS. These kind of, I think it's a 1% rise this year for staff, and they tend to make a campaign around wage cuts, but not really have any organising on the ground to support it. So the demands are kind of there, but there's no kind of working class collective action they've just capitulated to the cuts.
Okay, so my personal experience of joining the IWW was actually by accident. I kind of discovered it through its historical stuff rather than like seeing it happening in front of me. When I moved back to Sheffield, I started working at Pizza Hut, and to be honest, at first I didn't really connect the dots. Like I know there's probably a lot of us who've done jobs like that in our lives. You know, like worked in like a fast food place or whatever, and for some reason it took me months to connect those two things up and to be like you know, my personal politics are my personal politics, and then I'm at work. I mean, my manager at the time even made a joke of it and was like, put up a little, because I ended up in the paper for jumping a barrier at a Lib Dem conference, and she put up the newspaper article in the staff room and was like, "Oh, isn't this funny? You're a political radical, it's hilarious." And at the time I just was like, "Oh yeah, that's funny, isn't it?" And then it took a lad I worked with getting pissed off about the fact that we didn't get extra money for working bank holidays for me to go, crap, yeah, these two things are connected, like, and my involvement in the IWW should be active in my workplace, obviously being like a union where we fight for better conditions in the workplace and do that by doing it ourselves, not waiting for someone else to do it for us. You know, obviously it was me who needed to sort of get on there and get going with it, and it was his sort of anger that got me riled up, and I was like, yeah, of course, this is shit. You know, I work for a company that makes billions and billions every year, even if they siphon the majority of that over to the States and claim they're not making money. Like, that is, you know, it took that leap to connect the two things up.
Signed up through Dave and started going to a few of the monthly meetings and other bits and bobs, and then at the same sort of time, my work. I was just working part time as a bartender while being as a student, and that started getting a lot. The conditions there, or either I started noticing them, or it seemed as though they got a lot worse. So then got into organising and going off with some help from some of the guys who'd done a bit in the past with Pizza Hut and other campaigns. A bit of mentoring, I suppose. Tried to start doing a few things to improve things in my workplace as well, and it just naturally progressed from there. And then as I got on, over the last 2 years or so, I've got more and more involved.
Yeah, well, I got involved with a friend who is in the IWW, and I was telling him my situation in Sheffield, and like immediately he helped me out, and he put me in contact with other people and gave me like really good advice. So I felt really like protected and helped in that situation, and since then I'm part of it.
So when I moved to Sheffield, I eventually got a job at Pizza Hut. Put it into Google and instantly the IWW came up. So I went and met up with the membership secretary and Dave, and yeah, just kind of went from there really. Yeah.
So the way the IWW makes decisions is bottom up. You know, I've been a member of GMB. I've been a member of Unite. You know, I understand how other unions work, and it's not like that. Other unions work with officers and officials making decisions on negotiations with your boss. Someone comes in and has a negotiation with your boss on your behalf. You probably have a vote on it, but you won't be involved in it. In the IWW, it's completely the other way around. What workers say is final. Every single member of the IWW has the right and is encouraged to be involved in every single aspect of the union. When it comes to negotiations, when it comes to putting pressure on the boss and deciding how you put pressure on the boss, it's us as workers who decide that, not some official or somebody else. You know, obviously we've got officers and we have all those structures in place, but they're just there to support and to encourage you, and to give you advice, not to tell you how to do things, because it's workers who make those decisions.
The IWW is all about what you put into it, and so there's all this training that happens. I think I joined the IWW and within a week I'd already been to Leeds to do some training. And I really don't think any of the trade unions would do that. And that training has helped me in my job. It's the organiser training that I did. And, you know, it's a tough job to organise, but just I think everyone could benefit from that because the things that it teaches you.
Well, it was just really heartening to see that there was a union that was actually trying to work with people that mainstream unions were claiming, you know, we can't organise these people. It seems fairly obvious to me that what the actual power is when you are bargaining with your bosses is the power that you as a worker have, which is to withdraw your labour. And as a group of people, you have the power collectively to withdraw your labour and shut down that operation, essentially.
Particularly for health workers, the IWW is really important because there's within healthcare there's this kind of narrative that favours the bosses, that if you go on strike, for instance, which is what most unions do as their main activity, then you're letting the people that you work for down. And a lot of workers in healthcare don't want to strike because they don't want to leave people behind, and that leaves you in a very vulnerable position. But the IWW uses direct action tactics where you don't need to necessarily leave work. You can get together with other healthcare workers across professions and across disciplines and work together, doing things like a march on the boss, where you'd go up to the boss as a group and put your demands to them, and the IWW can win things that way.
We got more and more people in the shop I was working at involved, and sort of built up a workplace committee where we all, like a small group of us, worked together to carry on pushing the struggle forward. And it took a really long time because it was like my first experience of doing it, and obviously the other people in my workplace, majority of which hadn't really had even sort of like political activist experience sort of thing, you know. So it took us a long time to get to that stage where we were having an effect. But you know, we used all the sort of different sorts of methods to really push it forward. Like we did put in like a grievance letter to say that we were pissed off about like not getting enough petrol money and not getting the bank holidays paid extra on top, and through putting that pressure on the company, you know, they essentially ignored that. But then that pressure built up because we kept on pushing on various different things, like the safety standards in the shop were awful. Like the bike gear that we had to wear when we were out on the mopeds was terrible. It was like was falling apart. Helmets were broken. Trousers were falling off us. You know, it's like really unsafe conditions. And then things like as well, like oven gloves and stuff had big holes in them, but were never replaced. So that was like things like that were a fight. But you know, like mainstream trade unions in this country would tell you to write, oh, there's like a legal mechanism for that, and we have to write them a letter and go through this process. But they don't. That kind of thing doesn't make sense in those kind of industries, because pizza huts, like family style of management, they just ignore grievances. They don't follow a proper grievance procedure. They just go, oh yeah, oh well, let's have an informal chat about it, and then nothing happens. And they try and ignore and brush things under the carpet. So, you know, that kind of formal mechanism simply doesn't work. You know, you need to put pressure on them in other ways. So we were using direct action by like throwing busted gear in the bin and getting rid of it by damaging it further and stuff like that. And those things were what gave us strength and what built up pressure on the management. And so when it came to our main two disputes, which was over bank holiday pay and petrol costs for delivery drivers, you know, those things built up. We built up to those things because they were our big demands, really. And in the end, we ended up having a big picket outside the front of our workplace. But that took nearly a year to get to that point. But when we did, you know, it was the majority of people who worked there were on the picket. You know, we had a really strong presence on it. You know, it wasn't a strike, it wasn't an archetypal strike, we weren't working off the job, we were just protesting outside the front of our shop. And that protest, backed up by Wobblies, not just in Sheffield, not just in the UK, but all over the world, meant that Pizza Hut really felt the pressure. And in the end, we ended up winning a pay rise against a company that employs, just in this country, thousands of people, by just organising well and organising strongly in just one shop and really using direct action to put pressure on the bosses and demand what we wanted. You know, we managed to win a pay rise that will have affected hundreds and hundreds of delivery drivers all over the UK who are now getting 20p extra for every single delivery they take because of what we did in that one shop. So yeah, I think it was that experience of being involved with the IWW on a real direct way that got me really passionate about the IWW and what it can do in any workplace, regardless of where you are. Yeah.
Took some direct action after I'd been dismissed from my job in a wine bar in Buxton, just purely for asking for holiday pay for the staff, for the 4 or 5 of us that were working there. In the textbook retaliation from the business owner, we kind of responded to that retaliation, applied pressure back to the business owner, and again got results through a combination of tactics as well. So we had, at the same time, we had legal kind of casework stuff, making very clear that we were willing to go through those, jump through the legal hoops. And at the same time, simultaneously, we had all the everything put into motion with the membership from the union coming down, people from all around, not just Sheffield and Buxton, but from all around Yorkshire and the north, Manchester, Leeds, all these different branches and all these different people all came in and were on the street in front of the business. Overnight, people had designed amazing banners for the which got the message across to the public about what had happened. There was a social media campaign, pretty much just sprung up out of nowhere from all over the place. It seemed like all this support coming in for me, and it was really encouraging. And you feel like you've got this huge team all around you. Eventually, the business owner kind of backed up on what he'd done and had to dole me out, pay me out some compensation money and back pay all my holiday pay, and he changed the conditions for the people that were still working in the venue as well.
I don't think that the system that we work in at the moment is very good and very fair, and I feel like the IWW is almost pretty much the only union that kind of has a practical element to it and helps people in their day-to-day working lives, which is also explicitly anti-capitalist and is explicitly looking for an alternative to the economic system that we operate in at the moment, and that's a huge thing for me. I don't want particularly to invest much time and energy in an organisation whose sense is, well, we're fighting for, you know, a 2% pay increase, or for our workers to not have to work on 0 hours contracts or whatever it is, but go no further than that. I think that's like, you're never going to get anywhere with that attitude, because it's always regressive. That there is always a kind of, it's in an economy which is driven by profit, there is always a struggle between the people who are working to generate profit for someone else and the people who are profiting from their labour. And to me, you know, the IWW is an organisation which makes that clear and which makes it obvious that that is not the way that things should be organised. And I'm prepared to commit to that in a way that I wouldn't be prepared to commit to anything else. So.